Good evening.
Hello, here we are again at the Venice Film Festival, symbolised by this winged lion.
Venice is one of the two great film festivals of Europe, and this year it opened with Mexican director Alejandro Inarritu's Birdman.
He's made some fairly serious films in the past. This is his most light-hearted and possibly his best. Did you always have Michael Keaton in mind for this role?
Yeah, I think he was always like a strong candidate, and when I finished the script I think that it was like the obvious guy, not only because he really was the pioneer of Batman and the superhero kind of thing, but and the authority that he has, but because he has the incredible craft of going through comedy and drama simultaneously and with great depth and empathy. You know, I think I need that. And I thought it was a great opportunity for me to explore my own battles with ego and what it means in the industry that we are and the world we are living. And anyway, it began to be expanding, and a guy, you know, losing his mind through his own voice. And so suddenly an actor became a nice possibility to explore that. Not because they are the only ego guys, I think because they are the most exposed human beings about that. So anyway, that's how it started.
The backstage, was that shot on a set? Or was it really a backstage?
No, it was built in precision with the rehearsals in order to serve every single movement of the camera. So it was a clockwork. Absolutely, everything was pre-designed and meticulously rehearsed, and it was no room for improvisation in anything that you see.
There was no luxury of cutting away or editing around anything. You knew that every scene was staying in the movie, and like theater, this was it. This was your chance to live this scene. There was no other setup or close-up or anything like that. So yeah, it was totally exhilarating.
We had it all. You were a movie star, remember?
Who was this guy? He used to be Birdman.
Well, it's a good role for an actor. I got to tell you, you ask anybody would go, man, I'd like a role like that. Because you get to do so many things, or at least try to do so many things. Every time you try to explain to somebody the movie and the process, they go, oh, it's like a play, and you say yes. And then compounded by the fact that there actually is a play inside the movie that you perform in front of an audience. I mean, that was a big factor for me, actually. I thought, wow, there's a lot to do here, and a lot of different things to see if you can pull off, and never bored, never ever bored. Frightened, but never bored at doing this one.
Al Pacino's in two films here. Barry Levinson's The Humbling, which is out of competition, in which he plays a Shakespearean actor having an existential crisis.
The world is a stage, and all men and women merely players. How about that? Any better?
You know, a main thing with actors, especially as stage actors, is the tired of doing the same thing. That's part of what we do in our movie, and to show how it intellectually and emotionally gets you to stray somewhat.
I'm a lifeguard, certified. I could save your life.
You already have. Feelings he has for his work are dissipating or becoming less available to him. So he tries to compensate and becomes overwrought and confused and slips into a kind of depression, panic that expresses itself in his work.
And then there's David Gordon Green's Manglehorn, in which he plays an aging locksmith whose past is crippling his future.
This has got real value. I know these things.
I like your shirt.
Yeah?
You look good.
You do too. Thank you. You look You look like a racehorse or something.
I'd been wanting to make kind of a fairy tale make a film that has almost a fable in its own narrative, a morality tale. And then I met Pacino unrelated to this project, and I saw these threads of character that I hadn't seen in a movie in a very long time. You know, not the grand bravado or, you know, some of the things that he's so talented at doing, but these kind of under the skin sense of humor. Or little subtle gestures and reflections that I was really drawn to. And so I kind of combined the idea and said, I want to make this kind of fairy tale with you. You know, I had a very short screenplay, so it was nice to be able to work from a place that had a little breathing room so we could do improvisation and play around with it. But there was no, I mean, the pressure is to take advantage of the moments I have to work with Al Pacino and make it great.
Thank you!
I think it's about time we took a look at some of the films that we've seen. I think we ought to go back to the beginning to start, because Birdman certainly set this festival off with a blast. It's such a good film.
Sure did.
Alejandro Inarritu's story of this guy, played by Michael Keaton, who starred in 3 Birdman films, blockbusters, and now wants to establish himself as a serious actor on Broadway by adapting a Raymond Carver short story.
It's a wonderful film, this. I loved it. I think the photography is absolutely superb, the way that this sort of flows almost continuously. It's just great to look at, great to listen to, because the percussion score is great too.
No, it's really a really good film.
It's a major film, I think, a major film. I also liked another backstage story, She's Funny That Way, which is the comeback for Peter Bogdanovich. He hasn't made a film since The Cat's Meow a long time ago, and this is a screwball comedy with Owen Wilson as a theatre director, who has an unfortunate habit of spending nights with hookers. And his wife is acting in the new play he's doing, and lo and behold, who should turn up for the audition the first day but the girl he spent the night with, who's played by Imogen Poots. And everybody thinks she's great. The playwright, you know.
The wife thinks she's wonderful.
The wife thinks she's wonderful. So that's the setup for a film that sort of takes a while to get started, but once it does get started, it's good classical screwball comedy stuff.
Yes, it is.
Delta, no, Delta, darling, where are you? Downstairs?
But there's some serious films here too. One of them is Joshua Oppenheimer's follow-up to The Act of Killing, called The Look of Silence, which once again looks at the massacre of communists in 1965 through the search that an optometrist does for how come his brother was killed during that time. So he goes around villages fitting people with glasses all the time, asking questions.
And you really feel for him because I mean, he obviously desperately needs to know, but he's turning over these stones and uncovering all sorts of nastiness, and the evil guys are still in power, and there's a real sense of menace. And I actually prefer this film to The Act of Killing, because it's a much more linear story, because it follows the story of this young man, and it's a much more contained story.
I mean, they're both very confronting films.
Right, yeah.
Another topic that is very controversial is euthanasia, and this is addressed in an Israeli film called The Farewell Party, and it's set really in an old age home, and it's how these people deal with serious illness and, you know, approaching dementia. And it's performed wonderfully by a cast of veteran Israeli actors. And it's leavened by this beautiful black humour. Really lovely film.
Yeah, it's a very accomplished film, I think. As you say, it's very well acted, and the black humour is really well integrated into this drama, and I think it's very good. I also very much liked independent American film by Raman Barani, 99 Homes, which is a very up-to-the-minute story about the way, and the horrible way, that people are being forced out of their homes when the banks foreclose on them because they couldn't repay their debts during the financial...
2 minutes to
Two
get
minutes
out of
to
the
clear
house.
all their belongings out.
A lifetime.
And Andrew Garfield is very good, I think, as a young man who lives with his mother and his son in one of these homes. He's evicted. It's a terrible experience. Then he does a sort of pact with the devil.
He joins the dark side.
He joins the dark side because he gets a job with the Michael Shannon character, who's the real estate agent. So it's a very interesting and very well-made film, I think, and again, very well acted.
Yes, yeah, and certainly with a very strong message.
Indeed, yeah.
Should we go off and see more movies?
Let's go.
Andiamo.
Andiamo to you too. Roy Andersson is a Swedish director who made 2 films in the early 70s, one very successful, one not. And then he didn't make another feature film for 25 years when he started a trilogy on the subject of being a human being. The third part of the trilogy is a pigeon sat on a branch reflecting on his existence. And it's a very dark, pessimistic comedy, beautifully photographed in a very stylized way.
So I try to pick up painting qualities in art movie. So that's my ambition. Because nowadays I think that the movies, they are so poor visually. Because of lack of money, lack of time, lack of patience, lack of even talent. In my opinion, people, they cut and move the camera because they haven't solved the scene. So it's some kind of save the scene by make it easier to get the scene. So that's why they cut. So my philosophy is I don't cut if it's not necessary. I don't move the camera if it's not necessary. This room tells more than the human being in a picture. The room tells his value system and so on. Without that, it's not so interesting. I call my light philosophy light without mercy. There is no way to hide. You are always illuminated and naked.
Är det någon som vill ha det här? En räksmörgås och en stor starköl. Gratis.
Jag kan ta ölen.
Ja, varsågod.
An important aspect of any film festival are the interviews with the filmmakers. And I'm waiting now to do an interview with Abel Ferrara and Willem Dafoe for Pasolini, which is in competition. It's about the final 24 hours in the life of the controversial Italian poet and filmmaker. While I'm waiting, Ferrara and Dafoe are doing interviews with other television journalists and with print journalists at what are known as round tables. Print groups are allotted about a half an hour. But for us in television, we're allotted 4 minutes, 10 minutes if we're lucky, because it's a one-on-one situation.
I know a place.
You know, biographical movies are a genre in itself, right? So, you know, maybe we had the original idea the day we knew he died. You know, it was very... You know, obviously it was a shock to us. We were young filmmakers. He was a big, you know, we're big fans of the guy, you know, so.
We also knew we didn't want to make a film about his death, because there's lots of films about that, and particularly in Italy, they're obsessed with conspiracy theories and who killed him and that sort of thing, which is interesting and valid, but that was not what we were interested in. We were more interested in his ideas, his way of being, and his work. So, with some time, after kind of trying to weed out all the usual biopic seductions, we came up with the idea of basically covering his last day and that was just a good form for us. You can imagine all sorts of things about his life, but where he wanted to go is what we try to express. The projects that he was interested in doing that he never got to do, the kind of state of mind he was in was reflected really a whole arc of his writings. With the exception of his house, we shot in a lot of the actual locations of the events that happened. We shot in the restaurants he ate at, the people that were there. Some of them were there when he came in. So when you have those kind of real places, real things, it's like flirting with ghosts. It helps you. It helps guide you, and it also helps in your pretending.
The fact that he looks like him really has nothing to do with it. But the fact that he does now, that gives it that extra oomph. And the fact he's wearing his clothes. Those are his clothes, man. That's the metal the guy wore around his neck. You dig? That's his. That film ends on that book. That's Pasolini's book. That's Pasolini's handwriting. You know? And that don't look like a day book of someone who thought he was going to die. You know? He had a full schedule for that day. He had a full schedule for the day after. You dig?
Well, we've got a fair few films under the bridge by now. David, what's appealed to you?
Well, an interesting French film is Three Hearts by Benoit Jacquot, who made Farewell to the Queen. It's a film which starts off in a provincial French town at night. A man, tax inspector from Paris, misses the last train, has a chance encounter with a young woman played by Charlotte Gainsbourg. And they arrange to meet again in Paris, but they don't for reasons that we won't go into. Then he meets her sister, played by Chiara Mastroianni. It goes on from there in interesting sorts of ways.
Do you know, I had a problem with this film because Benoit Poelvoorde is, he's not wildly handsome. I know he's very well known. The character that he plays in this is not so charming that you would believe that two women would give up established relationships after one meeting with him. I found that a little bit incredible. I'd take it a bit slower if I were with him.
Well, if they did, there wouldn't be a film, Margaret.
Look, I liked another French film, which was Loin des Hommes, Far From Men, an adaptation of an Albert Camus short story by David Olhoffen. It stars Viggo Mortensen and Reda Kateb. Mortensen plays a teacher in Algeria in 1954, just as the uprising against the French is beginning. And he and this man who's been delivered to him as a murderer, whom he is expected to deliver to authorities, find themselves caught between the opposing forces and have to escape over the Atlas Mountains. And the scenery is sublime.
Yeah. It's a very classic sort of semi-Western.
Yes, it
really
is.
Very beautifully done. The landscape is very beautifully used, almost in an Anthony Mann kind of way. There's a music score by Nick Cave and Warren Ellis,
exactly.
which is very strong and powerful.
And not predictable either.
And Viggo Mortensen shows once again how versatile he is, both as an actor and as a linguist, because he speaks this in French and Arabic.
Well, a film that people either like or really dislike is Sivas, a Turkish film by Kaan Muceki, about a village in Anatolia where this young kid adopts a dog that's lost a dog fight. And it's a huge Sivas Kandal sheepdog who's very bloodied and wounded when he rescues him. But it's really about this kid who's sort of fighting for his place, and he's so feisty, and I'd hate to be his mother, but I really admired him because he was so spirited.
I didn't like him at all. I thought he was an obnoxious child. I didn't like any of the people in this film. I thought it was so disappointing because, of course, Winter Sleep, a Turkish film, won the Cannes Film Festival this year, had high hopes for this, and I thought it was awful. I mean, it's incredibly badly photographed and this stupid handheld all over the place way.
Do you know, I rarely look away during a movie, but I must say, during the first dog fight, I had to lower my head.
That's the other thing. The animal cruelty in this film is really intense.
But at
and
the
quite
end
horrible.
of the film, it says no animals were harmed in
I
the
don't
making of
believe
this.
a word of it.
Well, you've got to believe it. That's
Why
what he
would I
says.
believe it? After what I see on the screen.
Yeah, it was pretty unconvincing, that claim.
It was awful. There's a much better child or young person performance in another French film, The Last Blow of the Hammer. This is a 13, 14-year-old boy who lives with his mother, who's very sick with cancer. They live in a caravan. He's never met his father. It turns out that his father is a musician, a conductor, who's visiting the local area to conduct a musical event. And a bit like James Dean in East of Eden, this boy is drawn to find this missing parent that he's never known. And the relationship is just beautifully done. It's a film by Alex Delaporte, who made Angel and Tony. And it's beautifully done, I think.
You know, there are so many films about children here because Bypass is about, a 16, 17-year-old called Tim, played by George Mackay, who has to look after his kid sister, who's a truant from school, a pain in the neck, really. He's got to try and keep the bailiffs from the door, literally. And, you know, he's got something wrong with him medically. So his older brother is just out of jail, but on one of those things they tie around their ankles, so they're being monitored. I mean, it's a tough world that this kid faces. It's a film by Dwayne Hopkins. I thought it was really strong. I thought it was too long. That was the only thing. If only these filmmakers could be disciplined enough to know when enough is enough.
Well, you see, yes, it is too long and it's too over-emphatic towards the end. The performances are very good, I think. But you see, you and I, one thing we basically strongly disagree on is the look of films. And this is another film that has a very precious look to it. I mean, every shot is sort of artsy, deliberately artsy. And I found that increasingly annoying, especially when they reference a British film of another era, The Fallen Idol, which is one of the most beautifully photographed films ever. So I think that's a very unwise thing to do.
Oh, David, you drive me crazy sometimes because
it's
yes,
mutual.
It is arty. It is arty, and the trouble
in a bad way.
The trouble is that its length works against its artiness. If it had been 90,
I think its artiness
95,
works against its artiness.
I liked the look of it. I liked the fact that a filmmaker is presenting a different vision to me, and it's not just ordinary. We differ again. Hey, what's new?
Nothing.
Well, I think at this point we ought to go on with the rest of the program.
Well, the weather's turned a bit chilly, but that's a good time to talk about a couple of horror films. Veteran director Joe Dante, who made Gremlins and The Howling back early in his career, has made Burying the Ex, about what happens when a nice young man can't get rid of his ex-girlfriend.
Oh dear.
Oh, God, that freaking hurt. Never said I was graceful.
You won't die.
And then there's the Austrian film Ich sei, Goodnight Mummy, by Veronika Franz and Severin Fiala. This is about twin boys who come to believe their mother isn't their mother.
Mama?
We were trying to do a film we would like to watch. That's maybe not only a horror film or not an art house film, or it's just a film we would like to see.
Yes, like a horror film. I think good horror films have also a poetic quality coming with them, and we like that. And I think it's always thrilling if you have contradictions in films, and you have this contradiction of beautiful nature and, you know, this dark house where the children kind of are closed in. So that kind of contradictions really interested us.
The first part of the film is told from the children's perspective, and we thought a lot about how children see the world, what's the children's view of the world, and it's kind of fairy tale-like. I mean, sounds they hear in the house, I mean, it's all kind of this fairy tale atmosphere, but it's being a child and seeing the world as a child again. It's about, for us, it's a film about family.
Family film.
It's a family film, and it's about education and how, like, a power in the family shifts from one person to another, because usually the parents or the mother are in charge, but in reality it's not always that way. Sometimes parents feel overpowered, and they are, and the children have the power.
Well, we've seen a lot of films, we've had a lot of great discussions, we've made our judgments.
But it's up to the jury now, and the jury this year is headed by the French composer Alexandre Desplat.
The Indian film Court from director Chaitanya Tamhane won both Best First Film and the Best Film of the Orizzonti section of the festival. In the main competition, I was so pleased to see Adam Driver and Albert Rohrwacher win Best Actor and Best Actress for Hungry Hearts. Sivas by Turkish director Kaan Muceki won the Special Jury Prize. Joshua Oppenheimer's The Look of Silence won the Grand Jury Prize. Andrzej Konchalovsky won Best Director for The Postman's White Nights. But the main prize, the Golden Lion, went to A Pigeon Sat on a Branch Reflecting on Existence by the Swedish filmmaker Roy Andersson.
So that's the end of another Venice Film Festival.
Oh, it's sad to be leaving. We'll be back in Australia next week. See you then. Good night.
Good night. I also very much liked an independent American film by Raman no, I can't say his name. What's his name?
Raman Barani.
The third part of the trilogy is, and I forgot the title.
And Benoit Poulvord plays the man. And, well, I thought you were going to come in and say it.
No, well, you haven't given cause, you haven't taken a breath,
for
God's sake.
Go.
Just take a breath, for God's sake.
Well, that's the festival for another year, Margaret. That's going to go straight into the goof tape. You know?
Great decisions. Not every good film can take out a prize here.